Hi, I'm Darcy Corbin, a project development engineer at Ecosystem Energy Services. I'm here with Aman, Hehar, Associate Director of Energy and Climate Change at Humber College. Today we'll be presenting lessons from an early start on campus decarbonization. The presentation will examine the lessons learned during Humber College's journey to implement a campus-wide decarbonization initiative on its North Campus. Building on the progressive vision established in its integrated energy master plan, Humber is currently finalizing the design of the largest district energy project in a Canadian college. Aman and I will share the key challenges and successes in managing change, addressing strategic vision, engaging stakeholders, key internal processes, and developing and procuring a campus-wide project. Next slide. Taking a look at Humber College in 2014, Humber is Canada's largest college. It's located in Toronto, established in 1967. There are 35,000 full-time students, and it's focused on academic excellence. Humber has two campuses in Toronto, the North and Lakeshore campuses, totaling 50 buildings, roughly split 50-50. There's a total floor area of 2.4 million square feet and a 2014 EUI of 300 kilowatt hours per square meter. 2014 is the beginning of Humber's process to address the sustainability. Next slide. Humber is a pioneer in Canada in terms of long-term strategic planning. Aman, you started your process back in 2015. What was the landscape like then?
Yeah, thanks, Darcy. It looked very different. So I think back then, energy and sustainability were definitely on people's radars, but most institutions, they were doing things incrementally. So when they were doing a project, they try to do the best that they could. A lot of focus on low, no-cost initiatives, but we didn't see a lot of examples of significant reductions in energy and greenhouse gas emissions at a portfolio scale. So there might have been some plans out there from different institutions, but yeah, we didn't see a lot of examples of institutions that were far down the path and had demonstrated savings at that 30, 40, 50% range at a portfolio level. In terms of our major drivers for doing it, a big one was financial risk on the operating side. So we had our utilities budget exploding for several years, and it was mostly due to rising utility rates. And at the same time, we had a lot of deferred maintenance, right? I think it was approaching about 100 million at the time. So we saw some obvious synergies there. We were going to be investing a lot of money improving the existing buildings. So why not at the same time lower our future risk related to operating costs from utilities?
And so you recognize these rising operating costs and this deferred maintenance. And back in 2017, you started strategic planning at the institution. Could you take us through Humber's journey of strategic planning?
Yeah, for sure. So, actually our planning started well before 2017, but, this slide shows kind of the current status and the strategic hierarchy. So the plan we're focusing on mostly today in the presentation is our Integrated Energy Master Plan, our IEMP, which is shown in the bottom right here. It's our medium-term energy and climate plan. There's a 2014 baseline, and the goals go out to 2034. But the plan didn't come out of the blue, right? It was a response to our core values of sustainability and our ambition to be leaders in sustainability that were set out in the higher level strategic documents that were for the college level, right? So that's one of the key messages. It's much easier to get support for these types of initiatives when you can show how they fit in as part of the strategic priorities for the institution. So, when we got into the planning, we did a lot of benchmarking, and the goals, if achieved, would make us amongst the best in the world for energy efficiency. And that's what the institution wanted. So the goals are a 50% reduction in energy use per unit area, 50% reduction in water use per student, and a 30% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. And that GHG goal is an absolute goal, so not indexed by any means. Financial goal, we're aiming for a 7% IRR on the entire plan. And finally, an academic goal. So if we're going to be making all these investments in energy, let's figure out a way for the students to benefit from it and try to expand our offerings related to energy curriculum.
And so the plan that emerged at that sustainability level was more directional than technical. You didn't have prescribed solutions necessarily on how to achieve those goals technically. So what were the advantages of that kind of approach for Humber?
Yeah, good question. I think we're very cognizant of the fact that we didn't want this amazing technical plan that was very detailed, but sat on a shelf collecting dust. So we knew we needed a roadmap for sure, but our focus was mostly on stakeholder engagement and getting buy-in. So if I could try to describe what our org chart looked like for our project working team, we had our typical folks from capital development and facilities management that you might expect, but we also had sponsorship from 2 vice presidents, our academic VP and operational VP, director of finance, procurement manager, an academic dean, multiple faculty members, president of the Student Federation. So it touched on a lot of parts of the organization, and that was very deliberate. So the way it worked was, we had a core team at facilities that was working with the consultant on the day-to-day, but we had major milestones where the core team would report back to the broader team. And so that broader team was engaged in setting the goals, all the benchmarking, and then when we got to the end, everyone understood why we were doing this, and essentially it was a rubber stamp. So, yeah, I mean that ended up being a bit of a shift in our focus, and that was the reason why we did that.
And you mentioned operating expenses earlier, obviously, but you also mentioned that Humber established kind of key financial parameters and other top-line metrics to guide this process. So that was in terms of budget, but also in terms of outcomes. Can you tell us about those parameters and top-line metrics and what the benefits were of setting those early?
Yeah, so we obviously had energy, greenhouse gas emissions, and water as top-line metrics, but on the financial side, it was IRR and a budget. So the ask that we had to our board was for 70 million, and it was for the entire energy plan, and it was approved. And the theory was that we only needed to go once for that approval, and I think that's a key feature of the way we did it. So our responsibility was to deliver on those high-level metrics for IRR and energy, but it was for the entire plan, right? So we don't need to go back and get approval on every individual project. And what that means is we can do kind of the capital-intensive, poor payback, infrastructure type projects like a steam to hot water conversion that in the future can enable significant reductions. But we just have to balance that out with some quick payback stuff like lighting or controls. But selling it all as one package, one project is the only way I think that you can get to those deep reduction goals.
And then a critical feature of that approach was the ability to remain flexible. So that was a feature of not choosing a technical solution from the start and rather a directional plan. This allowed you to consider changes to utility costs, market conditions as time evolved. Initially, a cogeneration plant was part of your IEMP directional plan, and there was a shift away from that. Could you explain that and the benefits of flexibility?
Yeah, so like you said, we had more of a roadmap instead of a detailed technical solution, and that inherently gave us flexibility as long as we were meeting those top line metrics. And so with the cogen specifically, the whole conversation around carbon changed pretty dramatically since 2015. So, truthfully, it became more of a focus, and energy kind of took a back seat, whereas it was probably completely the other way around when we started. And so, given that lens, the cogen just started making less and less sense for us. And, especially in Ontario here, where we have a very clean electricity grid. So we wanted to explore other alternatives and look for a kind of a lower carbon solution. But just the makeup of the plan and it being more of a roadmap gave us that flexibility to look for other options.
So between beginning that process in 2014 and today, you've executed $35 million approximately of your original $70 million kind of capital budget. And you've successfully reduced energy intensity and carbon footprint across both campuses, achieving about 40% of your energy efficiency goal, but slightly less, only about 1/6 of your GHG goals. However, these projects you've done, which were generally envelope focused or deferred maintenance focused, set Humber up for the larger district energy project we're going to talk about next. Next slide. And that district energy project is now being finalized in its design. That process formally began in 2021, which is when Ecosystem got involved to perform the detailed design of that district energy project, which is now kind of moving into the construction phase over the next several years. To give a little background on the North Campus specifically, which is where the district energy project will be occurring, the North Campus has an existing steam system, which was built in 1972. And steam is distributed to 1.3 million of 1.8 million square foot of building area. It produces hot water locally in each building up to 170 degrees Celsius Fahrenheit, at about 65% efficiency. Similarly, there's existing chilled water network, which distributes chilled water to 1.4 of 1.8 million square feet on campus. Next slide. So in addition to kind of the core steam to hot water conversion, you also procured for several key project requirements, we'll call them, with steam to hot water being the only prescribed measure. So why were these key project requirements included in your procurement process for the district energy project?
Yeah, so the steam to hot water conversion specifically, like you said, it was core from the beginning. We knew that we needed to get rid of the steam to ultimately get to our net zero by 2050 goal. And this first phase of the project gets us about halfway there on the campus by 2026 roughly. But I think the important part is, we have that low temperature hot water infrastructure that is there for the future so that we can easily bolt on another low carbon piece in the future when we need it. So to steal an analogy from someone else here at Humber, the piping is the highway, and once we have the highway, we can drive any car we want on it, right? But we have to build the highway first, and that's what this project is for us.
And then aside from that conversion from steam to hot water, what were some of the other requirements that you had?
Yeah, so some of the other big ones were is the intent to connect all of our islanded buildings. So we had several that had their own plants and wanted to feed them from one place, make it easier for operations and maintenance. It also sets us up for the future. When we want to, decarbonize further, we just have to make the changes at the central plant, and all the buildings are affected. It's much easier. Another key piece for us was maintaining our classification as an unattended plant. So the TSSA is the regulatory body here in Ontario for boilers and pressure vessels. And so our current plant doesn't need any special staff to attend it, but if you exceed certain thresholds, the legislation will then bring in requirements for additional staffing, either during the day, in some cases 24/7. So we wanted to make sure that whatever solution we got didn't start introducing additional operating costs related to staff. So moving on, these are some of the KPIs for the project. Like I said, we weren't exactly sure what the technical solution was going to look like when we started pivoting away from cogen, but we knew we still wanted the same significant reductions in energy and greenhouse gas emissions to support our IEMP. And then on the financial side, having an economically viable project was really important to us. I mean, the money's nice, but almost as importantly, it was the scalability of the solution. This climate problem we have is a big one, and some folks will do it because it's the right thing, but we know that for a lot of institutions, a lot of organizations, it's the business case that matters, right? So we wanted a project that could stand on its own 2 feet, and made sense financially, and the environmental benefits could just be kind of an offshoot. So yeah, really important for us to be an example for others to follow.
And so the approach Humber took to, I guess, procuring this project, this district energy project, was an integrated one. As you mentioned earlier, steam to hot water conversion is not necessarily a payback project. It's capital intensive, and the returns are not specifically high on that kind of measure. But that steam to hot water conversion was integrated with a reconstruction of your central plant focused on electrification. So that uses electric boilers as well as heat recovery heat pumps. And then the project also integrated battery energy storage. This allows for Class A peak shaving, which is maybe unique to Ontario, but certainly familiar to our Ontario audience, as a way to, or as an opportunity for large OPEX savings. And so the outcome of this integrated approach was kind of to meet all 3 of your high-level goals: 50% GHG reductions on the North Campus, over 40 million in OPEX savings over the next 25 to 30 years, and a 7% IRR over the same period of time. Moving on to the next slide, you can see an overview to help visualize what it looks like, or what the expanded network will look like. You can see buildings at the lower right corner, which were previously islanded and are now served by underground hot water piping. There's also different redundancy features kind of built into that network, interconnecting different buildings. As you can imagine, this project of this scale is not happening overnight, and the building conversion and the network conversion and expansion will take place over a 3 to 5 year kind of implementation period. And just to wrap this up, Humber went to market at least 2 times, once for a consultant who could find an economically viable project based on their IEMP, and then again to find extra innovation on top of that. In terms of the project design, how did the existence of your original plan and the whole planning process help?
Yeah, so Darcy, I think with the plan fundamentally being a roadmap, it just gave us the flexibility to pivot. Conversation around carbon started to take greater importance. The challenge for us was meeting a similar financial return to the cogen, right? And that's where we went to the market to look for a solution. The work we did with our first consultant on a feasibility study told us, yeah, maybe there's something there. Maybe there is a different way to do it and still have a bit of a financial return, but we weren't completely thrilled with the solution. We thought there might be further opportunities for optimization. And then, we went out a second time. And this time there's more of a focus on innovation. So we asked bidders to give us their ideas, right? Show us their innovation on other projects. And so having that focus during the procurement stage was what got us the right partner, I hope, ultimately in the end. And hopefully a solution we're going to be happy with.
And so that solution you spoke of, which was arrived at through collaboration between Ecosystem and Humber College, is a district energy project which will overachieve on GHG reductions, in fact, for the North Campus and help you on aggregate for both campuses overachieve your GHG goals. And at the same time, reach substantially lower EUI aligned with your target as well, which can be built on through future projects in the remainder of your sustainability plan. So just to summarize, Humber's had a long journey to get where they are today, ready to put kind of shovels in the ground to implement their North Campus District Energy project. And so just to summarize, Aman, what are some of the key lessons or takeaways of this process that stand out to you?
Yeah, so there's a few that I wanted to reiterate here. So one, definitely stakeholder engagement and communication early on is absolutely key. Taking the entire campus kind of long-term approach, also key, to breaking away from that incremental mindset and then moving towards, more ambitious breakthrough goals. And then lastly, just stressing again innovation. Right? Don't settle. Sometimes you might get a solution that doesn't quite feel right. It's always worth getting a second opinion, and eventually the market will deliver a solution that works. So yeah, with that, I wanted to thank everyone for attending today, and I hope you enjoy the presentation. Thanks again.
Thank you.